Hey folks, Brian. I was getting ready to run my game tonight, and I realized that I have not done a session review for the last Elderath game that we ran. It's been busy week. Anyway, let's get rolling. From last time, we refueled the ship, and we discussed some issues on what to do. How do we crew this thing, and some discussion on, hey, we owe Thurman time to thoroughly investigate the ship. And we kind of decide we've got the ship now. We're here now. Let's do the now thing, which is try and find Mad Eye and let Hjalmar get his justice. Okay, so as we're discussing various things, there should be some kind of system for attitudinal control here. And there's, in fact, a spot on the ship for a launch so that we don't, eventually we'll have to get a launch so that we can just go back and forth and leave the ship out in the bay, not actually up at dock. So as we're searching the ship to determine if it is, in fact, airtight, both Wes and Raymond think that this is possibly space-worthy. Dylan is thinking that it might have something to do with the teardrop ship that he saw, these elven ships being cased. Okay, that's what Dylan's thinking, right? But the casings, as we're looking at the ship for the various ports, are larger than would normally be needed to be just watertight, and they are, in fact, not wood. They're high-tech materials. So the ship is a sailing ship, and its purpose is to travel about. So there's a galley that is expensively outfitted, flatware for common use, but there's expensive stuff too. There's refrigerator, freezer. There's some kind of advanced microwave kind of thing. There are these MRE-like deals, enough for 3 passengers for 2 weeks. All the perishables have been well past spoiled at this point. There is a shower in the main hall for the crew, near the crew compartments. There is a master cabin with its own refresher. And all of the accoutrements are appointed very well and efficient. Not quite, first class, but, it's not lavish. It's, it's a sci-fi setting from this ship, right? But everything needs to be cleaned. And nothing here is designed for aliens. There are crew uniforms. The master's cabin has additional stuff, plus that's where the weapons locker is. Okay, so we separate from the other Viking ships on the pretext that we're going to continue to look for the fleet, and we tell the crew to return the captured warship back to port, and the chieftain knows they salvaged it for him. And then they can gather up a new crew for the warship, and they can come back and continue the search. That's the story we're giving them. It's late night. We're heading north-ish, but not too fast. We start checking the computer for various kinds of sensors, right? And Raymond finds something, but Wes interrupts and says, no, look there. He actually rolled an +1 on his ECM, electronic countermeasures. And there are instruments that show our position on the planet. It shows various contacts within range, their velocity, which includes speed and direction. And it does, in fact, show that this planet is a toroid. And then there's, in fact, the moon that goes up and down, plus one that circles around outside. But there's no other emissions down here, but way up above us, in orbit, are emissions. It looks like a frigate. It's got markings that are pre-exodus from Earth. Now, this is back to the far horizon side where hundreds of years ago, I think it was thousands of years ago, where there were gates found and there was an exodus from Earth to this sector of space that the Far Horizons campaign was set in. But then it was shut off when the Corellians attacked. So this is pre-exodus time, this frigate that's up there, right? Also, there are things underwater as well. We kind of figure they're whales, large fish-like or animate creatures. And we do, in fact, find the fleet. We also discover, let's talk about the moon. Okay, so we discover there are 3 ships paralleling the fleet. There is in fact a telescope in the main cabin, and our ship under the repulsors, which nullifies the mass of the ship, but it's still not all that fast, right? So we head towards the fleet. We do get the point at some point where we get the ship up out of the water so that it's not dragging in the water to have the repulsors have less drag. But anyway, okay. Next day, that evening, Raymond notices a signal paralleling the fleet under the water, not organic. We're discussing what to do when the fleet, as we're watching the sensors, the fleet disperses. A few get really, really tight, but some others move out, and there's the subsurface contact rises to the surface. And in about a half an hour, one of the surface ships and the subsurface ship turn away from the main fleet, heading southerly. So we decide to follow them. Next day, about an hour before sunrise, one of the surface contacts submerges. We're assuming the one that had been submerged before. So the sub goes northerly, and the surface ship continues southerly. So we decide to follow the surface ship. At about 10 miles out, we land back in the water to intercept. I have surface. That's not quite what happened, right? But then they turn towards us. They see us. They're flying colors. We don't recognize what it is, but it seems familiar. So we let them close. Raymond discovers that the telescope is, in fact, a high-tech sensor disguised as a spy class. It acts as a multivisor. So it's got infrared. It's got night vision. It's got a max range out to 25,000 kilometers. Or it's got to be 25 kilometers. 25,000 kilometers? Wow. Magnification 100. But it's out of power. Okay, so we get close to the ship. It is, in fact, crewed by orcs. There is a transfer control switch from underneath to the surface to topside. And so Raymond figures that out. And so we get up on top. And he's got a collective, like a helicopter, for altitude control. So we get within 120 meters, and they start firing arrows. So at this point, I think we're actually above in the air, if I remember right. So we decide to keep them at bay. They're trying to board. And Wes is up there peeking over, getting shot at by arrows, and throwing down sleep spells. And the first two just did nothing. But then one did some decent goods. So a round goes by. They cut the grapples, decide to depart. We catch up. Okay, we catch up, and Wes has got some air spells. He doesn't really do much with them, but he can do some things. And one of them is air stop. So within a certain radius, he stops up to 30 kilometers per hour wind speed. And so their sail just stops, right? And at that point, they start, because they had been rowing, or they start to row. But anyway, things are happening. So Wes then starts casting, what's it called? Slumber Cloud, which decreases the amount of oxygen within a certain sphere so that people eventually fall asleep, right? And you have to make saving throws every round, but after so many rounds of doing the asphyxiation rules, you're just not going to make it. So they all eventually go to sleep. We jump down, disperse one of them, dispatch orcs, disperse the next one, dispatch orcs, dispatch the last slumber cloud, and dispatch orcs. So the thing about slumber cloud is it's not a concentration spell. It's got a duration. So we can cast it, then start doing stuff. There are, in fact, 12 Viking warriors, and we discover on the orcs Aklo stamped money. In fact, that's the symbol on the flag is the Aklo. Hjalmar is with Wes on the ship, and Hjalmar decides to give half to the Vikings. No, so we take half. About 200 silver. So we start talking to him. Okay, what happened? What'd you see? What happened? It tells us about the spider-sailed ship came up from underneath the water, and there was this spider centaur-like creature, and there's these dark elves, and there's a dark elf woman who's in command. She cast spells, and there was this fog that separated their ship from the rest of the ships, and this ship is not as long as the spider ship is not as big as our ship, right? But it came up out of the water. The Viking ship lost wind, was boarded. The spider tar leapt across. Many of the Vikings fell asleep with these darts that got stuck in them. They did over here. They were going to sell the Vikings into slavery in Aklo. Some of the crew, the captain and the youngest of the Vikings, are missing. They've been taken. So we send them back to the fleet, and we're accompanying them. Just a side note, Wes rolled a 0.9 on his estimation to repair the needler because we got a needle repair kit. We've got extra needles that came from the ship, and then we've got an actual needler back. I think it's still at the villa. That it was, not out of control. We kind of figured that we can, with what Wes figures, with what he has, he could get the needler, to fire once, then have to fix it, and fire once and have to fix it. But that's something, right? Takes a couple days to get to the fleet. No encounters. Those other 3 ships are still paralleling the fleet, and that's where we ended our session. Happy